Hi, welcome to this tutorial that is an introduction to Photoshop and setting up your workspace for photography. It's specifically designed for students of the Hubbard School of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Minnesota. My name is Regina McCombs, and I teach Journalism 3102 and 4302 that this is specifically designed for. If anyone else finds this useful, that's just great. So we're going to talk about Photoshop Creative Cloud Edition here. When you first open it, typically this is what you're going to see. It's going to show you the recent files. I have a bunch of them for obvious reasons. But the reason I wanted to start here is because I wanted to point out all the resources that are available. Photoshop has a ton of tutorials built in, as you'll see if you click here and go to Learn. You can see all kinds of tutorials that are built in, as well as tutorials that are on the web. Adobe has a ton of really useful tutorials available on their website. And then you also have access to LinkedIn Learning through the library. You have to log into the library, and then you go to LinkedIn Learning, and you have access to all of those tutorials as well. And they have a ton of stuff, not just on Photoshop, but on all of the entire Creative Cloud suite. So I am going to go back here. I'm going to click on this one because I want to open it up. When you open Photoshop for the first time, it typically starts in what it calls its Essentials mode. I do not find this essential, so the first thing we're going to do is change that. We are immediately going to go to Window, Workspace, and we're going to move to Photography. Now you'll see it changes. But for my purposes, and I hope yours as well, I still want to rearrange. These workspaces are endlessly flexible. So the first thing we're going to do is close libraries. We will not use that in these classes. For now, I'm going to go ahead and close up layers and channels. In more advanced classes, you may use those, but we will not use those. And we're going to go ahead and close up paths as well. Now, instead, I find history extremely useful. So we're going to put history here in this tab, and we are going to move properties over to here and info. So now we've got a bunch of things here. I'm going to go to Navigator, right click, and close that tab. If I didn't say that before, you right click and close the tab. Actions we will use in 4302. We will not worry about actions in Journalism 3102. And then clone source we will never, not ever use in photojournalism practice. So we're just going to close that altogether. All right. So this gets you the first of your spaces that you're going to need to use. So now I have an image open. You'll see I have a tab for that. As I open more images, multiple tabs will be open here, and I just switch between them by choosing the different tabs. You will see Photoshop, depending on which tool you're choosing, the options up here will change appropriate to the tool. One of the nice things that all the Creative Cloud apps do is if you hover over those apps, it actually gives you a little quick sense of not only the name of it and the keystroke, which follows it in parentheses, but it also sort of gives you a little quick mini video on what it is that tool does. So if you can't quite remember the name of the tool you wanted, if you hover over, you'll see that these will give you a quick idea of what they all do. For the most part, for these classes, we will largely just use the cropping tool and the zoom tool. And the zoom tool in particular can be done almost entirely with keystrokes, but we're going to sort of talk about using it through the tool itself. So you'll see that if I click on the zoom tool, if I hover over, I get a plus sign. If I hit the option key, I get a minus sign, which would be zoom out. Plus will zoom me in. You'll see up at the top here, I have a number of options. Probably the most useful one is 100%, which is what we really want to use to get a good look at our picture to make sure everything's in focus. If you really want to check focus, you can zoom in even more. Otherwise, the other really useful one is fit screen, and this fits the image to the screen, the size of the screen we have open, and so then we know we are seeing the whole image on the screen. So fit screen and 100% are typically the most useful ones. Every once in a while, you'll zoom in more than that, but not most of the time. Okay, so I want to show you a couple things that these panels over here are useful for. So if we go to properties, that's going to tell us how big the image is, whether it's horizontal or vertical. We can kind of tell that, obviously. But info can be a really handy tool. We'll talk more about this in class, but colors on screens are broken into red, green, and blue. And if there is a 0, that means there is none of that color. And if there is 255, that means it is fully blue, that it is blue as blue can be, or green or red. So it ranges from 0 to 255. And you'll see that if I come and hover over with my cursor, no matter what tool it's set on, it's going to tell me what that color, what any particular color is. So right here, you'll see that red is 149, green is 139, and blue is 138. They're pretty close, and that makes sense because we're seeing that these are gray. And gray is, of course, a mix of all three colors. So as we go up here to a lighter gray, you'll see the colors stay fairly close. If we go onto her skin, however, which is the sort of most color, we have much more red, and then less green and even less blue for her skin tone. So a lot of times you kind of want to get a sense of what a color is. And then also this number, the X and Y, is showing us where we are in the image, which pixel we're at. Not super useful, but every once in a while you might want to know that. Okay. So then the other really useful thing, I think, is the histogram. Histograms are basically visual representations of our file. In the same way that a waveform represents the audio image, a histogram represents the video image. It's the photo image. It's representing the color levels and the light levels. So if we look at this, even if we didn't know anything about the photo, we'd say, oh, there's nothing sort of super, super black and nothing super, super white. And there's a lot of tones in the mid-range. And that makes sense because skin tones tend to be in the mid-range and grays are obviously in the mid-range. And there's not a lot of black, super black. Even her scarf is not really, really black. We can see there's just a little bit of that there. So right away, we can sort of tell where our tones run. We'll talk more about histograms in class, but at least that gives you sort of the introduction to what they're doing. If you want to use keystrokes for zooming, you will see that you can come up here to view, and zoom in is the command plus sign, and zoom out is the command minus sign. And if you want to fit to screen, that is command 0. And then actually command 1 is 100%. You'll see there. So I can go to 100%, or I can use the command 0 key and get it to fit to screen. So depending on whether you're more of a keystroke or a tool user, those are both useful options. All right, so now the only tool we're going to talk about to start here is, sorry, my mouse just went away. There it is. We are going to talk about our crop tool. So the crop tool is a really handy thing that you see when I clicked on crop, I got a bunch of information up here. Now it's telling me that this crop is automatically preset to 16 by 9. So if, as in 3102, when you do your slideshow, having it preset to 16 by 9 means it will exactly fit in a video window. So this would be just sort of cropping it down to that. But if I take a corner and drag it in, it will keep that same ratio, but I will move it in further. If I want to get her positioned differently, I click and drag her around until she's positioned in a way that I like. So we're going to try and use our rule of thirds there a little bit, get her positioned. And then to set the crop, I just hit the return key or the enter key on a PC. And then it will crop that to the correct ratio. So now I know that this would fit specifically in my video window. Now, if you don't care about fitting in a video window and you just want to crop it for the right size and shape you think it should be, then we will handle this slightly differently. And this is where it's kind of good. See, here's our history. We can see I've cropped it once and I've said, no, don't want to do that. So I can either do a Command Z, which is undo, or I can go back steps, ever how many steps I've done. So in this case, I'm going to go back to how it was when I opened it. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to choose height by width by resolution. And I'm just going to hit, yeah, it's clear. If there's any numbers in here, you're going to want to hit clear. And then you can basically freeform it to any shape and cropping that you want. So if you're ever stuck and it feels like it's forcing you into a specific shape and size, just make sure that this is clear up here. So I could even sort of do it in case I wanted a little, what we call a mugshot for a newspaper article, which is just a tight shot of someone's tight crop of someone's face. I can do that. I can make a tight crop. If I decide, oh no, I need it to be square, I can come up here and do 1:1, which is square, and it will automatically size it for square. Or if I know that my paper uses 4x5 shapes for the small shots, I can change the ratio, and then I just hit enter, and there we go, and we're set. In our next tutorials, we'll talk about how to change the levels of our image and how to fix the color in our images. So tune in for the next episode.